Okay, sorry about the sound quality on this. I'm doing it at the coffee shop, and I might have some stuff that gets in the way. So I hope that the sound recording comes through clearly. If it doesn't, you can always go back and read the poetry primer. All the information that my online page there, all the information you need is written up there. And you also can attempt to apply what you've learned from your Norton versification packet. So I'm not too terribly worried that you can't figure this out. But as an effort, in an effort to give you guys some background information, since C Block has missed so many days and since I'm absent today, I'm going to try and do this video tutorial. I'm sorry that it's difficult to listen to these when you're in class because you have everybody else doing them at the same time, but there's really nothing for me to do about that at this point. So we'll give it a shot, okay? Our lesson objectives for today are for you to see and think about how you can mark up a poem by yourself, and then you'll have the handout, the fly and the sick rose that's on the substitute teacher's desk that you guys can use to practice what we're going to try and show you guys today. Sorry about the noisy people in the background. Okay, so here we go. What I've done is I've created a dabble board that's got a poem that you may be familiar with, one that we might have already done something with, that I'm going to attempt to mark up. Again, because I don't actually have a pen feature on this computer, I might be a little bit rough in terms of trying to figure out exactly how things are supposed to look. So let's go through it and see what we can do. Please remember, again, that if you go to our poetry primer, under Romantic Poetry Primer, we have complete directions on how to read a poem in 3 easy steps. Alright? So, step 1, what imagery is present in a poem? We've talked enough about imagery and we've drawn up enough imagery that I'm really not going to cover that too closely. You guys know that you can filter imagery through not only your visual perception, but also through your sense of smell, your sense of touch. It's any kind of sensory detail in the poem that might give you a clue to indicate its meaning. The second step of working through a poem here is to close read the poem. And again, I've given you an example of that here with the tiger. We can talk about apostrophe, synecdoche, metaphor, alliteration in the tiger. And if I haven't already done this, we'll do a more detailed reading of this when I come back. Okay. The third step then is to scan the poem. Now, scanning the poem is probably the section that C Block has missed so far. Again, please see that I do have a pretty comprehensive set of notes here on how to scan the poem. And it goes through step by step by step on the things that I want for you to work through. Okay, so I'd like you to try them, and perhaps there's something about trying it that is more important and a better lesson than simply watching somebody else do it. Okay, so you're going to count the number of syllables per line. You're going to indicate the rhyme scheme, and then you're going to go through and put stresses in the appropriate places. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use William Blake's The Clod and the Pebble. I'm sorry I'm talking so quickly, but I want to make sure to make this video as short as possible. I'm going to use, also because you can watch it again, you can go back over it again and again and again. It's fun for the whole family. I'm going to go to William Blake's The Clod and the Pebble, and I'm going to show you how we can go back and forth and actually work on these 3 steps in an individual poem. Okay, so here's William Blake's Clod and the Pebble. The first thing I want to do when I do this is read the poem to myself. Okay. And obviously you're going to have your own kind of gut reaction to the poem, and that's fine. So I'm not going to read it out loud to you right now. You guys can look it up and read it at your own leisure. But what I'm going to do for myself is I'm going to create a line down the right-hand side of the page. And the reason I'm creating a line on the right-hand side of the page is because I'm going to indicate, if I can get this to work, I'm going to indicate the rhyme scheme over here in this column on the right-hand side for myself. I don't like my rhyme scheme to run up against the edge of my page because then I get kind of confused. All right? So then what I'm going to be able to do is indicate what I think the letters are over there. So, love seeketh not itself to please, nor hath it any care, but for another gives its ease and builds a heaven in hell's despair. All right. So, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put in that column, text, the rhyme scheme. So I'm going to click, and since this is A in the rhyme scheme, I'm going to put an A there. And since this B doesn't rhyme here, I'm going to put a B here. And obviously I'm going to put an A over here because ease rhymes with please. And so on and so forth down the page, right? So that I've got well, let's finish out the stanza, I guess. And we're going to indicate here, despair, care, they rhyme, have the same last sound, so it'll be here. This should look relatively familiar to you guys. You guys should be able to do these. It shouldn't cause you any real problems to do that. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit. Okay. All right. So, we've got the rhyme scheme beginning indicated. You guys should go ahead and do the complete poem on that, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to do if I'm going to scan the poem is I'm going to go down the left-hand side of the page, and I'm going to count up the number of syllables, and I'm going to place them there. So, counting, love seeketh not itself to please. Doing that way, I find out that it's actually got 8 syllables to it. So I'm going to indicate that 8 over here on the left-hand margin. Oops. Nor for itself hath any care. That's also 8. And I'm going to do that all the way down this page. You'll be able to see that they tend to have 8, so I can actually move them down the page and indicate what's going on with them. Please look for variation in the number of syllables per line. That often indicates something important, what's going on with it. Okay. So once we've done that, we're going to go through and we're going to attempt to mark out the rhythms on the poem itself. And I'm going to do this freehand if I can do that. Now, where we start in any line of poetry to mark the stresses is we start with 2-syllable words, because in English, every 2-syllable word has at least 1 stress syllable in it. So in this case, we're going to go back and we'll see that seeketh in itself are going to be 2-syllable words. So seek, oops, I'm going to put a stress over seeketh. Itself. Now is it itself or is it itself? That's tricky. Love seeketh not itself. I'm going to say that it's on self here. There's a little bit of variation in this. To please. Now, the second step of that is we've gone through and we've already got all of the indicators for our 2-syllable words in this particular line. Now I'm going to go back through and I'm going to look at what I think are important nouns and verbs that ought to be, I think ought to be stressed as I say it. Love seeketh not itself to please. So I see that please should be stressed, and I believe that love ought to be stressed. Now we know that we should go back through at any 2-syllable word and put our unstressed line, which is a vertical bar over the top. And now, because this one comes in the negative, not seems to be stressed. Love seeketh not itself to please. I'm going to stress not, and unstress, and unstress 2. So the pattern that we have here is 2 stresses, unstress, stress, unstress, unstress, stress. So what I'm going to say that this line is, if I look at the repeating patterns, now I'm going to mark them through. I see it's divided up by 2-syllable units. And if I go ahead and do this, we'll see that this is a substitution of spondee in the first line. But after that, it seems to be pretty regularly iambic tetrameter. So once I've identified that pattern, I can go ahead and mark that on the line. So I think that the meter now, I've done this enough times that I can kind of identify it just by sound, so it seems like it's a little bit of cheating. But what I would normally do is go through and continue this process of stress and unstressed marking and dividing up the feet by the vertical lines until I identify the pattern. And for a short poem like this, I would go ahead and probably scan the entire poem. And that's exactly what you're going to do in your markup today. Okay? So give it a shot, see what happens. After you've got it all marked up like this, then you can go back through and you can actually indicate some of your figures of speech. You give an arrow over here like this. I notice that this love seeketh not itself to please. Geez, love can't speak. It's an idea. It's a concept. It's not a person. So I'm going to say that this is personification. Right? or hath any care, but before another gives its ease and builds heaven and hell's despair. Ah, heaven and hell's despair. There's something strange that's happening there. I see the H's. That's going to be alliteration. So I can actually type that in up there. And we're going to have other points of alliteration down here, especially with the idea of like meters, meet. If I can get it to draw. It's hard to draw without the pen feature here. Meters, meet. Right? And we will go through it, and every single thing that you notice in the poem you should mark up and work out. All right? Well, hopefully that gives you a sense of where we're going today, and I hope that this comes through relatively clearly. Good luck and have fun. You need to do both of those poems for tomorrow, and then go ahead and get back onto the reading list and read as many poems as you can. And please practice using this 3-part approach to reading poetry as you read those poems. Thank you.